Did you?
I feel like I was. I got used to sound. I feel like it. Yeah.
You were white around, so.
You do good. Good.
Jody,
Okay.
kids go back to school tomorrow.
Good.
So
Doing great.
I'm really glad.
they are.
There you go.
Do we need to spread out
Hey,
something?
how you doing?
Good.
Good.
How you doing?
I'm well, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, that'll work. I'll scoot down.
How about it?
How you
You
doing?
all right?
Yeah.
Good. Where you was at?
Just trying to spread out a little bit.
Well, like the water.
Hit one of the chairs.
So we went out about a minute.
That book learning. Let me tell that book learning.
Well, JD got a teenage same issue when I had to
I can't get more time for it when attached to the,
Get your text messages.
JD could be a good judge
keep
of
it off
that.
that.
Take a while.
Yeah, how you feel?
Feeling a whole lot better.
Last time I sent it to
Hey,
him.
Rudy.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you? Good. Huh?
You go to the hospital?
I went out there one night. I was feeling bad. Had to do IV on, give me some IV, what have you, but they didn't. I didn't have any breathing problem. My problem was running fever and smelling and tasting.
Make sure they
It was tough for a minute.
Good thing you didn't get right there.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Hey, JD.
Make sure they will.
Make sure they
Forward that email
Well,
that I
that's what
sent
we
you
were
on the
talking
agenda.
about. Through our mask, can you hear it? You know what I'm saying?
He's having the same problem.
project.
Scan saw you. Good grandson. He was sleeping.
That's good.
Yeah.
When he's not sleeping,
Right.
he'll be yelling.
Yes.
John, no. Text, and where would I go to look at that?
City website.
City.
It's undeliverable.
Right now, the one.
What number?
You there, JD?
Check it, JD. I sent it.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
sent it to him earlier. He got up and so maybe he forwarded it to me. Russell, what's wrong with JD this morning? Good testimony. About an eight. It looks good right there.
Yeah, you see, that's what I'm gonna say, just.
And it got.
Share.
And that's it.
Trying to go up to help. Did y'all hear that Kyle Scholar?
Yeah, I saw that.
Did it? That's awesome.
They get it back?
Yeah, just got back.
Yeah.
Right, 5:20.
Somebody apparently saw it wandering here today. It was pretty beat up and whatever it's been through
I
a
don't care.
lot of rough time.
Hey, Russell.
But so she's okay. She's alive, let's say that.
We'll take it. It is amazing, isn't it?
I was just curious, I just didn't know. I mean, bring it up the
That's a
same.
good question.
I don't know, legally.
What a lot of that's gonna be wrong, man.
Hey,
What is this?
That's the ordinance on the military.
Yes, it's 4.89?
yeah.
We're gonna do it with 4.6.
Is it okay if I present if he asks me to?
I'll hold it.
Yeah, we just need to change that.
What did you decide?
7.2. We're just gonna match the county, they decided to just keep it so close. We can go lower. Oh, I thought you.
Make sure there's another one, make sure.
No,
John
we never
Jones.
were there. They just changed it last minute. Andy asked us to do it, so you're okay. You did what you were supposed to.
472.
I was actually supposed to come.
He was supposed to walk straight upstairs and tell you.
I thought it was nice.
Hey, all right, now, you feel like we're ready to go? Okay, so we got
I thought it was nice.
Hey, all right, y'all, I'm gonna call this meeting to order, and the first thing we'll do is have an invitation and John will do that for us, and then we'll take break.
Brother Frank. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for many blessings of life you've given us. Most of all, thank you for Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, who takes away the sin of the world. If we just accept and believe, confess and repent of our sins, we too can be saved. Help us, Lord. Help us be imitators of Christ. Be within our hearts. Be within our minds. Help us to go forward and do the right thing for you and for your sake. Most of all, our country's in a dire straits now, Lord. We need your help. We need your guidance. Give us the abilities to do the right thing, to go forward. So many people are hurting. So many people are sick today. And Lord, they need your help. They need your blessing. They need your healing. Lord, most of all, be with us as a city councilor. Help us, give us the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do your will. For in the blessed name of Jesus we do pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the July 21st, 2020.
so ordered.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. So, Gail, if you'll call.
Councilman Graham,
Aye.
Councilman Middlebrook,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hand.
Yeah, I was not at that meeting, so I'll abstain.
Councilmember Tucker,
Yes.
Ms. Reeves is joining us via phone call too.
Councilmember Reeves,
Okay. All right, the next item is the adoption of the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or deletions to the agenda, Russell?
If council so pleases, I would interject a financial report under the city manager's report, and also to add a fourth item, which would be to set any appropriate decorum for an upcoming call meeting.
Okay, you want that financial report to be 4 or 1?
I would put 4 as the decorum and the financial report to be 1. So I guess
All right.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve it. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Gail, if you'll call.
Councilmember Graham,
Aye.
Councilman Middlebrook,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hand,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker,
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing regarding the rezoning of 4.34 acres located off Church Street. This property owned by the Jesse Rogers Family LLP. And Russell, if you'll just handle that.
Yeah, as required, we'll now call a public hearing open specifically for parcel T21043, which is 4.3 acres. You also have attached with your packet a copy of a memorandum that was submitted by the city clerk with a recommendation of the zoning commission to rezone the property from R1 to C2. Subsequently, you have a copy of the ordinance, which following the public hearing, if council so chooses to rezone, they will require an affirmative vote of that. And then you have a copy of the actual application that was made, an aerial photograph of the lot, and then a screenshot of the zoning map that shows the particular property that is being requested to be rezoned, and all of the zoning from the contiguous property. So at this time, we'll open up the public hearing, and if anyone wishes to address the council, they can do so now.
Okay. I think everybody pretty much understands what we're trying to do here. I met with the zoning commission a couple of weeks ago, and
And Eddie, you can just state your name that you represent.
okay, it's kind of hard to talk this. Eddie Rogers, representing Jesse Rogers Family LLP. I'm not representing the bank, even though this property is next to the bank. How we came about this property, we thought when we purchased this property, and kind of giving you a little history about it, the bank was approached back in 1998. We purchased 9.13 acre tract that's right behind the bank, and also borders another property that we have, which is 5.2 acres that's right next to the triangle. And also the bank has 2 other acres at front 19. This particular tract, this 4.34 acres, does not have any road frontage, and it is landlocked. So this property has no access to it other than through the property that surrounds it. Scott Blackstock's on one side, the 9.13 acres is on another side. The city has some property bordering it, and John Hightower on the south side of the property borders it, and then the Silvertown Ballpark's on the other side. So when we purchased the property from B.F. Goodrich on the 9.13 acres, it was zoned C2. 4 years later, in 2002, B.F. Goodrich approached my father and asked him would they like to buy the other 4.34 acres. And at the time, we didn't buy it through the bank because the banking department doesn't like you speculating on property. So naturally, we had to put it under Jesse Rogers Family LLP, and that's what we did. We naturally assumed that it was zoned the same as the 9.13 acres, but when we got down to it, we talked to Gail, there was no way we could find where that had ever changed before they sold it to us. So it's zoned R1. So for the purposes of trying to, we have no plans right now, there's no contract to sell the 9.13 acres, but if we do, or if somebody wants to come up from the south side and want the 4.34 acres, then we'll sell it to them. But what we want to do now is kind of get it zoned to the 9 acres that we have. And that's what we're trying to do.
Any questions for Mr. Rogers?
I'll just add, Doug, that the property to the east, where you see the R1 zone, that's actually the property that the city owns, and it's a split zone parcel, part of which is C2, part of which is R1. Property to the south, like Mr. Rogers said, is Hightower. The request is contiguous to an industrial zone and a commercial zone. And staff's recommendation is in accordance with that of the zoning commission to rezone the property to C2.
Okay. You've heard the recommendation. Have any other questions or a motion?
Motion to approve.
I got a question first.
Okay.
Legal question. Deanne, should I recuse myself in this situation due to the fact my oldest daughter is married into the Rogers family?
If you're not directly
I'm
involved
not
with the
directly involved in
LLP,
this, no financial gain.
you have no financial
No gain
gain,
whatsoever.
you would be fine.
So, I might have been a little bit out of order, call for a motion. We need to first close the public hearing. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing.
Make a motion first.
And so now,
Probably need to retract my motion first, then
okay,
I'll so move, retract the motion.
okay. So we'll close the public hearing. And now we're back in the council meeting. And so, are there any questions or do we have a motion? Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Tucker.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions? If not, Ms. Gale, if you'll take the vote.
Councilman Rittenhouse,
Aye.
Councilman Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hale,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker,
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
yes,
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the city attorney's report. Yeah.
I have nothing to report at this time.
Okay. We have nothing there. City clerk's report.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Russell, is there any city engineer's report?
Not at this time.
Okay, so we're bringing us to the city manager's report. And the first item on their line is we'll have the financial report.
Yes, so you should have two packets in front of you. One is the big thick one, that's your financials that you see every month. That is kind of for your review. The other packet that I gave you with the graphs is kind of what I want to cover this evening as we kind of go over a mid-year financial analysis. So the first graph is something that I put together that Russell and I monitor. You've seen it before. I monitor utility billing, electric, water, everything together at one time. And I want to draw your attention to the purple line, which is 2020, and then to the drop in June. As you can see, typically we go up in June and it dropped in June. So this caused us quite an alarm during the time, and started Russell and I on this chain of events that we were trying to figure out kind of what's going on. We contacted ECG, which you know is Electric Cities of Georgia, that we're one of 49 cities. We asked them to let us know kind of what was going on. If you flip to the next graph, according to ECG, we have about an 8% decline in our billings since the first of the year. Most cities, this plots all cities within ECG, we're the red one. So the average across all of them, actually it's kind of a weighted average, they do it based on that times the population, was about 7% down. So almost all, we're seeing a huge drop due to the pandemic, in our billing. ECG traced it kind of to the MEAG numbers, which is what we actually buy, where we purchase our power. ECG estimates that by the end of the year, our billings will be off, billings minus what we pay MEAG for electricity will be off about $567,000. This is what they estimate, $567,000.
That's your net margin.
That's what the bottom line would be effect on our utility rates. It's do what?
Say that again.
$567,000 bottom line would be what it would cost the city in utility rates so far that, what, Quad shut down a week, was it Dart shut down, we've had, Walmart going to less hours has affected us. Their bill's lower.
Well, did we sell power then for those times where they were shut down?
Well, we didn't buy from MEAG only what we needed, so that came off of that. So I'm gonna.
The 5 is the net.
The 5 is like a net number.
With that considered.
I'll show you in the end, right? I got some actual concrete numbers. So again, the next slide that I gave you, or the chart that I gave you, was the collections per month, so we could see. Although I haven't finished reconciling everything for July, you don't have July's financials yet, you see that our collections were way down and dropped there in July. Now the good thing was we saw the billing kind of go back up on the first slide. So I'm hoping this is kind of a blip in the radar type thing, but anyway, that's kind of where we were. The last graph that I gave you is another one that we always look at. It's our unreserved cash balances. So if our billing was down and our collections were down, I really couldn't figure out why our cash wasn't down. Our cash is maintaining kind of where it was. So I started looking at a lot of different stuff. One of the big things with our cash so far this year is we expended money for a water, actually a sewer project last year that we didn't receive the GEPA funds until this year. That was $630,000. So that helps us in this situation. And there's several other things. So I'm seeing a billing issue as we were kind of watching, but I'm not seeing anything that's causing us great harm as far as our cash situation at the moment. Okay? So the last one is what we always go over really quickly is our financials. This is a summary of this big packet that I give you. So in the summary, I give you revenues at the top, revenues, the top line for the general fund. We expect $4 million. 6 months in, we're only 1.8, so that's 2.2. Well, that's taxes we haven't collected and 1.2 that I haven't moved over from the electric fund because because we haven't needed the cash in it. So, you know, doesn't raise any red flags. Johnny?
But let me just ask you,
Sure.
we haven't collected taxes.
No, we won't collect those until November and December.
So your thoughts, your projection is that revenue will be down?
It's about 600,000 is what this is kind of projecting here, but I got ways to make it up. I'll show you kind of at the bottom of this. Looking at all the departments, which you see under expenses there for the general fund, I don't see anything. There's one department that's over budget right now, and that happens to be my department. And the reason is, when we had to eat those credit card fees for the 2 months that we were closed down with COVID, I didn't have anywhere to put that, so I put it under my department for banking, bank service charges to help everybody else's department type thing. So that cost us, I think, $11,000 or $12,000. So if it weren't for those credit card fees that we ate during that time, even my department would be okay. So you can see the Public Works Department has a huge, is under budget right now a good bit. That's where we budgeted the $215,000 for the park project, and we don't think we're going to have to spend that for matching funds. We think we can use funds that we've already, we already received. That we've already expended for that amount. I didn't give you water and then kind of the electric. Ryan, to your point, if you look under the electric revenues, our billing is actually off about 1.1 million, but we've paid MEAG less about 525,000. So what Cho did for ECG, they tried to estimate, now how good it's going to be, I don't know, but they tried to take July through December, give us an estimate and say at the end of the year, you're still only going to be down electricity-wise 567,000. So then that led us to looking at, do we need to do some kind of price cost adjustment, some kind of PCA, and what would that be? So we had them calculate that. So this is kind of where Russell and I sit at the moment. There's several things that have happened recently. One is we got that GFA draw for $630,000. GFA, I think, did we do it last meeting or this meeting? But we're finalizing. They pushed out our payments for 6 months, right? So that helps us to the tune of $190,000. And then I sat on a conference call for a good bit of Friday on the CARES Act it's come through the state, but the federal government. And our take on that is about $458,000. And so the federal government went back in and said, essentially now we're saying that any public safety salaries paid since March qualifies for that money. We can get reimbursed. So not just overtime, not just anything, but any of that stuff qualifies.
And it's all associated costs, that's benefits.
That's everything, benefits and everything. Well, since March till now, we've already expended $1 million on fire and police since March, and we got from now to December to go on. So I'm in the process with my staff of getting the necessary documentation together to collect that money. We have received $137,000 of it. They gave it to us up front. That's in our account, and then the rest, the $320,000 would come as we put it there. So I guess to me the takeaway is Russell and I are watching spending heavily. We're ready to do an increase or some kind of price adjustment if we feel like it's necessary. But right now with the CARES Act, that's almost $500,000 would almost offset what our deficit is planned to be. And I think just in the current situation where we are, I don't think recommending that we do any kind of an increase. It really hasn't affected our cash. We still have a good surplus of cash at the moment. And so that's kind of where we are.
So the net looks like it's a minus 705,862.
That's right, so far.
But we got almost 1.3 coming in, including the deferral.
That's right. If we do the deferment, we've got some money coming in there that I think, I just don't see the need to, we could always do a price increase next year to collect the money back up if we needed to, right? So I don't see the need for us to do anything irrational right now. I think let's watch it. As you know, we're going into budget season for next year, so Russell and I will start hammering financials every month and looking at everything very closely between now and the end of the year. So if we see something or there's some kind of a change, we'll come back to you. But I think right now, it's hurt us. It definitely impacted us. I really didn't believe we would have that kind of impact in electric rates. I was watching sales tax, but sales tax went through the roof, right? Because everybody got stimulus checks. Right. And Home Depot and Walmart, you couldn't get in there during that time. But it has affected our electric rates.
So let me ask you a question. Is the 458 the total of what the CARES Act would provide us, or will it continue to Unless they come out and say we're gonna do another.
Right.
The way they couched it was the Phase 1 allocation from the CARES Act was 458, 147. It's classified as Phase 1. Of the Phase 1, they said that you could receive a 30% upfront reimbursement. We had to go through some stuff, send the bank account information, sign up for a portal. Well, another item on the agenda takes care of some of that. Once we filled out all the paperwork, they wired us the money, but then said, oh, by the way, you gotta agree to the terms and conditions, and you gotta pass a resolution, and you've gotta be eligible expenditures, and it's gotta mimic what the Treasury Department says you can do, and it's almost like they sent the money and then we're kind of figuring out, we're going through training. GMA has a bunch of tutorials on what did, and like Lonnie alluded to, before the training, we actually received an email from the executive director of GMA stating to the fact that public safety, could be qualified. So it's all the money we know we have right now, but in them couching it as Phase 1, everybody's kind of watching what's going up in Washington. Should there be another appropriation, there could be a subsequent phase, but this is all that we know of, and my recommendation, all we should plan for is this in the now. I'm not interested, nor am I concerned in a blip in revenue. What I'm concerned about is a trend. And that's what me and Lonnie keep going back for. An 8% drop in the sales of electric revenue, that scares me. But when you marry that to the fact that overall out of 49 cities, that trend is down 7%, that tells me, it's not an anomaly specifically tied to Thomaston. There are other, municipal power cities that are going through the same thing. You take the 8% drop in revenue, if you add in the fact we didn't have the GFA reimbursement and the CARES Act had not passed, we're having a totally different conversation because of what that impact would be to our operational budget. But to Lonnie's point, due to those factors, from a liquidity standpoint, where we are in terms of cash position, I believe we're higher than we were in 2017 and
Right.
19. So
Yeah.
cautious observation where we are. Like you said, we've already had ECG calculate what an applicable power cost adjustment would be to help true up some of those revenues. And obviously that number changes the farther we get into the year. But wanted council to have these finances so that if you have any questions, we could try to address them. It's going to be somewhat difficult to forecast, next year's budget, given what, we're experiencing now. But for the current fiscal year, we have strong reserves. It does look kind of hanky on paper, just due to some of the things that have hit all within one given year, but we're comfortable where we are.
The chief draw, I guess, we've already expended that money.
Yeah, we expended it last year. The problem is, Ryan, you look at that as a positive, it helps our cash, because then we took on debt to get it.
I was about to say.
So it's not really like it's not the saving grace I would want it to be, but it did help.
The cash it is.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out in this year why our cash wasn't drowned, so, yes.
What was our sales tax from April, man?
It was up, do you remember how much it was?
April was up like 10%.
Yeah, it was up 10 or 12% for, when we collected in May for April. And I don't know what June was for the May time, so. I can get those for you, though.
And you probably said it, but there's no requirement to pay CARES.
No. They're just print money, I guess.
Yeah, well, we're fortunate, and Lonnie, I want to thank you and Russell for giving us $500,000 for the CARES Act, and the payment deferral is great.
Well, JD's been involved in that a lot as well. He's been on a lot of calls. He and Russell get on me, and then we go from there. So we're getting it, so.
Any other questions? Lonnie, anything else you want to say?
No, I don't. We keep rolling. I'm going to work on July this week. So hopefully we'll have that out to you pretty quickly, and then we'll just keep watching it and go from there.
And one thing I want to just say is we are so fortunate to have the quality of city manager and clerk that we have. They are constantly at work looking at, like any business, revenues and expenses and just constantly on it. So I'm very thankful that, and it results in this kind of projection and this kind of, situation that we're in.
This one's been kind of interesting because there's so many variables. There's so much out there, and it's been an interesting
Okay.
look.
All right, so thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the ordinance to adopt the proposed 2020 tax millage rate.
Council should have a copy of the adopted ordinance. There are two millage rates, one being for the joint project service, the other for just standard city O&M. I believe the bottom number on your ordinance says 4.89. The appropriate millage should be 4.72 on the joint projects millage. So if you'll make that modification, and we'll print a clean copy prior to execution. That was going back as far or as early as this morning in conversations with the county. So the recommended millage rate for city operations for the levy is 3.412 mils for city O&M and 4.72 for joint projects. The 3.412 mil will result in a net levy of $802,797 as opposed to the current millage rate, which is 3.56, which will levy currently $770,925. The joint project millage rate of, or what we are recommending at 4.72, the net levy will be $1,110,552, and the projected expenditures for joint projects or the city's portion thereof would be $1,006,782. So just as a reminder for our public, we set the budget that goes into effect January. We pay in up front, and then we set the millage rate on the back end to reimburse what we have expended. So staff's recommendation for the city council is to authorize and set the city O&M millage rate at 3.412 mils and to set the city special taxing district for joint projects millage rate at 4.72. And Ms. Gale has attached, just for your general information, at 4.72, this will be the lowest joint projects millage rate since its inception, and the last time the city's O&M millage rate was this low was in 1995.
Things haven't gotten cheaper, I'm sure.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
All right, any questions? If we don't have any questions, is there a motion?
So ordered.
We have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, Gail, can we?
Councilman Brett Hall.
Aye.
Councilman Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hale.
Yes.
Councilmember Tucker.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeves.
Yes.
Okay, the next item is the approval of resolution Coronavirus Relief Fund Terms and Conditions Agreement.
You should have attached with your packet a resolution. This resolution is not in the appropriate format, but the context of the body should be sufficient, and I'll let Ms. Deanne go over the semantics, but ultimately this is tied to the CARES Act's funding, and as part of the terms and conditions for receipt of the funds, one of the prerequisites is the adoption of a resolution that essentially binds the city to agreeing to the terms and conditions, and that will appropriate, use the money as the guidelines were set forth. So Ms. Deanne, you want to walk them through the
Sure.
whereases?
Sure. This is a grant that was created by the United States, and it's given to the state. So our agreement for the terms and conditions of this CARES Act and receiving the funds is actually with the state of Georgia. It's a grant that was created in an effort to mitigate the effects of COVID-19. And so we're required to use those funds for expenditures that are related to COVID-19. And I think Mr. Joyce has checked into that and has a good handle on what you can and can't spend it on. But the agreement specifically sets forth specific expenditures, and the basics of that is that it has to be related to COVID-19, that it's for expenses that were not budgeted for by the city. And I understand that Mr. Joyce has talked further with GMA, and they've clarified that for him. But it's also, as he stated, expenses that are incurred during certain times of this year, and that would be March 1st through December 30th of this year. This resolution allows the mayor and council to actually execute, deliver, and perform under that agreement. I believe the mayor has actually entered into that agreement as has been stated earlier, and this just kind of goes back and confirms that he had the authority to do that. In addition to that, it also allows the mayor to perform whatever other acts or provide other information as is required for the city to receive those funds. We also have to maintain records to ensure that the funds are expended for the expenses that are allowed under the act.
Okay. So, again, we're fortunate to have these funds, and we're just approving a resolution that says that basically we're going to appropriately use them and follow the guidelines that are in there. Any questions? Do we have a motion for the approval of that resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions? If not, then we'll take a vote.
Councilman Greathouse.
Aye.
Councilman Middlebrooks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hicks.
Yes.
Councilman Tucker.
Yes.
Councilman Reeves.
yes,
Okay. The next item is discussion of the 325 property.
Yeah, 325 Goodrich, the IDA was approached by a potential business opportunity. It was interested in 325 property for some sort of steel manufacturing, largely due to its location within the Federal Opportunity Zone. So I have some general information, but some background first. Ms. Deanne met with me and the owners as well.
Hey, Russell.
Yep.
Just so the audience will know, 325 refers to the old B.F. Goodrich property.
Correct. It's the property directly adjacent from the city reservoir where there's a pile of rubble and bricks. It's the property that the city is currently holding a bond as part of the demolition. So anyway, this company comes in. They're interested in certain incentives, relocation expense, and the gist of the conversation. The last conversation I had was they would be interested in acquiring the property. The property is currently owned by a guy, I believe he lives in LaGrange, but there's a finance company involved and several liens or positions on the property. And that company is out of Virginia. Virginia Capital holds that. So they would acquire the property if the city would clean the property up for them, was my understanding. As part of the conversation through the IDA, we had our city engineer bring a structural or a site development engineer, and then we had subsequent pricing that was provided by a local contractor, and I have copies of those quotations. So I have cost from $400,000 all the way up to $1.4 million, depending upon what level of remediation was done to the site. So I told them that I would bring that information to the city for your consideration. Obviously, Ms. Deanne had some questions about gratuitous issues, and the fact of the matter, that it was brought before the IDA board, I believe, at their previous board member, board meeting, and they declined the request. It was a unanimous decision of the IDA to provide incentives for this particular bill. 40 full-time jobs, approximate investment of $6 million. So the question has always been, what is the city's preference with regards to this property? We currently do not own it. We do hold a bond on the property. No work has been done. The terms of the bond were not met. So the money is there for remediation. Deanne, do you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Not unless they have further questions about it.
What did they deny, what did the IDA board, so they denied, what was it
They
they?
denied the request for any type of consent.
What were the jobs? I know you said the number, but was there any kind of median
Welders.
compensation?
These were going to be welding jobs. They did not specify, the wage that would be paid, but ideally, I would think a welder would be a
Yeah.
pretty good job. So the question is, what is the highest and best use? We don't have ownership of the property. Our involvement would be, I guess, in the terms of some sort of financial contribution. My recommendation to the council would not to put the city on the hook for the abatement of the site. There's all sorts of issues you get in there. I think that is the preference of the company. They want to walk in, they want the city to kind of take care of the remediation of the site. I believe they would use the existing footprint of the old HR building, the one that's still standing. They would make some improvements there, bring in their machines, and start up their operation. So
Basically, what they're asking is that they would buy the property, they would own the property, and they're asking the city to make these remedial measures to bring it up to where they want it. My concern is the city providing a gratuitous gift, so to speak, to an industry. But also, I talked with Russell about the fact that the property is going to be owned by these individuals. The remedial measures are going to be done by the city if that's what you decide to do. And if they sell it, then that would be equity that they get from the sale.
There could be some clawback or something to get to that, to prevent some of that from happening, for giving them a nice clean site, and then they turn around and sell it. So, I think, what was their IDA's reasons for declining, did they say, as far as any incentive money? Just by number of jobs, usually it's a qualifying, there's a qualifying there as far as how much investment the job, how fast the jobs come, if they live up to their end of the bargain. So, what was the...
I think there was some question as to whether or not that was the highest and best use for a 35-acre tract. And then I think there was some concern with the intent of the improvement they were going to make, that it would be, marginal improvement based on the fact that, there may not be a potential for resale there. So I think, not to but I think those were two concerns. City's concern has always been, we have this eyesore, this 35-acre tract. It is in a federal opportunity zone. It does sit directly across from a reservoir where we've got 500 million gallons of, processed water that we could use. Do we need to, recapture that as a potential industrial site or a potential spot for, mixed-use development or residential development? What is the plan for that site, and what is the city's course of action? And it always has boiled down to, do we go the court route and use a legal or a criminal remedy via the nuisance abatement process, or do we try to acquire the property outright and then use city funds to go in and abate the nuisance. And we've, you know, it's been an ongoing issue. It's been a problem for a long time, and we've never come to any, you know, conclusion on the best course of action.
I guess the
Obvious.
first thing that comes to mind is, how do we sell something we really don't own right now?
Well, that was part of the, you know, the issue. They would be
Predicated.
It would be predicated based on their ownership
Or our ownership first?
or our ownership.
And again, we don't know what kind of abatement issues, if you work that out, it's still the big unknown is how much money would it cost to remedy this?
You know, anywhere between $400,000 and $1.4 million based on the quotations that we have. And that is solely dependent upon the level of remediation that the city council would require. Is it just to remove the current debris, or is it to bring the entire area to grade, you know, seeded, made look nice, and, you know, dependent upon, you know, which approach you take, causes the price to increase.
In your recommendation?
My recommendation would be not to put the city in the position of providing the abatement. My position would be to expend any funds that council sees prudent if you think this is a viable opportunity for a business. And that would not be a gratuity based on the fact that we would declare that property a nuisance. And it is in the city's best interest and the public's best interest to abate that nuisance, to turn an eyesore into a, you know, a positive asset for the city. And how you draw that up legally and does that legal muster, that's probably a question better answered by Deanne. So then it just boils down to dollars.
All right, so this comes up just simply for discussion. And
You know, it could, I think, you know, they were wanting a decision. There are some time issues. If council wants to take, you know, between now and next meeting, mull it over. If there's any additional information you want to be considered, I'll be glad to try to provide that. And we can revisit it at a later date.
To me, we just don't know a whole lot about the opportunity itself.
I can give
You know,
you,
it's-
they have submitted to me links of their operation. They've even invited, you know, if there are any members who wish to go and view their operation, you know, they'd like to have you down. So anything that you want to make.
Hear from IDA, I'd like to hear from them.
Sure.
as to what they're-
Where is that home base?
They currently have an operation in Howard, and I believe, hey Howard, But I believe they have another operation out of state as well.
okay. All right, so I think we want to just take time to look at it and maybe have a possible vote at the next meeting.
Sure.
Can we ask Deanne to maybe look at some of those other legal issues to be prepared, you know, if that's sufficient time to kind of research those, to see what we're up against as far as the gratuitous piece,
Yes.
as well as any liability. I guess if we did the abatement, if we were in it, then we turn it over, what happens if something comes up, where's the liability rest? You know, if we turn it over and then we were in charge of it, you know, I'm sure all that can be worked out in the contract and whatnot, and that we, you know, release all liability. Just those type of things, in my opinion, on couple things.
Okay.
All right.
The next item for council's consideration would be to set the appropriate decorum for a future called meeting for the purpose of discussing the R.E. Lee Institute. We've kicked the idea around on you know, a highly politicized issue where there's a lot of public comment, and how do you create a venue or opportunity for the public to be heard while at the same time providing safety in the midst of the COVID issue. We know that the governor's order has been extended, which says that, you know, gatherings of 50 or more are prohibited unless we can ensure appropriate social distancing measures. I spent some time talking with the health department today and have asked them to weigh in. And essentially, you know, we have no way of predicting what type of turnout we would muster. I do not think it's legal, maybe you can answer, for us to set a finite number of people who can come to a technical, you know, public meeting. So, you know, it's completely up to the council what you want to do. Public comment is not required, but you have, you know, insinuated that it would be preferred given, you know, the highly political nature of the issue. So just a couple of thoughts. If you want to hear the public's input, you could call a public meeting. We know that we think we can hold about 160 people at the Civic Center and keep it safe with social distancing guidelines. So you call the meeting. Once you get 161 people, you got to shut it down and we back up and punt. You could postpone the issue until this pandemic is over, or you could come up with some mechanism for the public to give you their opinion prior to a public vote at which the public would not be part of, or any other measures that you could think of. But, you know, in thinking through the issue over the course of the past few weeks, I don't know how you have a public meeting and ensure public safety and require social distancing when you don't know how to anticipate how many of the public will be likely to attend. And we can't have, you know, I mean, I can ask for participants to sign up, but I don't know that you can turn people away if you exceed that number, since it is a public meeting. Just my thoughts, but if council wishes to weigh in, if you want to set a meeting date and set that decorum up, we can try and see how it goes. But in talking with an elected official today, you don't want an event for public comment to be, you know, a catalyst for the transmission of something that's already going around. So we need to be mindful of that as well. Thoughts?
Well, on a hearing like this here, would it be possible just to have the one that's going to be speaking there instead of just having the community there? You know what I'm saying? Is that legal?
Are you asking if we can have an open meeting and not allow anybody that wants to be present?
Well, you know, the one that's mainly on the public, that's going to make public comments. Could it be possible for them just to be the one that show up in there instead of just having a crowd there?
You say to have each side have a representative to
Yes.
speak on behalf of each side?
On each side.
I just don't think you can have an open meeting and not allow certain people in. Even if the two sides have one person that talks, they've got to all decide on that one person, and that may not happen, but I just don't think you can limit it if it's an open meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess originally we sort of thought, gosh, you've got to limit the number of speakers, and if you had 10 on each side. The problem is, I mean, that sounds like, well, that'd be neat, but what you're saying, Deanne, is you really, it's a public meeting and you can't really limit it. And what, you know, the huge danger, and I was on the COVID call today, and it's still a very super transmissible disease. It's in our area,
We need you to read.
I'm sorry, Lakeitha.
Go ahead.
So the fear is that it, as we saw in the early days of this disease, 2 funerals in Albany were super spreader events. And the concern for us is we don't want to become that, but yet how do we facilitate public input, which there's been plenty of input via social media, but how do we facilitate that? I don't think the option of waiting till it's over is an option, because we don't know when it's going to be over.
So the question, I guess the question before the council is, what do you need from the general public to get you to a comfort level where you would like to discuss and potentially take action? Does that mean we have to have a live audience in public, the public being able to address you, or is there another avenue?
I guess I'm, personally speaking, I'm would be most interested in hearing from my constituents. That's obviously who I would take direction from. So, my main concern would be hearing from them. I have heard from a lot of them. I'm not going to say here I've heard from the majority of them, but I have heard from a lot. So that would be my main concern too. I'm not discounting the other public, but obviously everybody has their constituents in which they answer to at the ballot box. So to me, not that I'm discounting anybody's opinion, but I'm going to be most driven by my constituents and encourage them to continue to reach out.
And so is that possible to simply just put out on the website that, we've had people that certainly have emailed us at the website to all of us, but is it possible to ask, people to email in and have it done by a certain time? And then it would not be a public event, but I think, Councilman Tucker, what you're saying is you want input from your constituents and everybody wants that, and then you'll make a decision based on the input that you have.
Correct.
And then instead of everyone does not have email.
Telephone call, I guess.
Okay.
Leave it up to the constituent and to the, however they want to, or, I don't know how you would give them both and phone number and email, I guess. I don't know how else to do it.
And I would certainly think any email ought to be made available to every councilman so that they have the benefit of that information, though they might not be in your...
Or represent which district they're in. And
Yes.
Take their address so somebody, Jeff can know if it's his, Don can know, I can know, you know. Obviously, it's everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's up to y'all. We'll set up and try to make what work.
Well, I mean, too, I guess flip side of that coin, if you were to have a regular public meeting, and you would say it's going to be at whatever, pick the venue, and then it filled up and nobody could physically get into the room, what would you do then?
Shut it down.
I mean, so I guess I know that that's kind of I don't know if I would say apples and oranges, a different way to look at it, but I mean, you would, technically could be up against the same thing, so I mean, it's the
What about
same.
here? We're going to have 160 people come.
Hey Doug,
Yeah,
I don't think so.
yeah.
is there a way that we could set up to allow the public to come to City Hall and maybe record their 2-minute, 3-minute, whatever, and then we have them on video?
Absolutely.
I don't know that I like that.
Well, Lakeitha, I'm just thinking we gotta have an organized way to get some input. Certainly, I would think we would want it in the next 30 days or something, The question is, do we think that we can ensure a safe event at a public space like the Civic Center? I think input from the health department has said, I can't guarantee that. And with numbers have risen, the numbers have consistently risen over the last 6 weeks. And yeah. And so it seems like we got to figure, to me, an alternative. Yeah.
I just want to comment as far as the numbers with what Russell said. Do you think you'll have that many show up? I know of 2 online petitions, and between the 2 of them, I think the number was around 3,000 people that had signed those petitions. So if you only had 10% of the people show up that signed those petitions, you're talking 300 people.
Which is in excess of the number.
Yes, and I think with what we've seen on social media, I'm just giving you my opinion of what we've seen, and with those online petitions, I think you could expect.
Who's speaking now?
This is Police Chief,
Okay.
Chief Richards.
Okay.
I think you could fully expect to exceed 300 people at a meeting, of that meeting.
Okay.
And I don't have any factual information. I'm just basing that on what I've seen on social media and some of those online petitions that I've seen, that I would expect you would exceed the 160 or whatever the number was. Or I would anticipate that.
Well, and I think that's a fair anticipation, that you would have more. And then, then I think we said we can't turn it away, so we would be forced to just shut the whole meeting down. So we're knowing in advance, we don't think we could accommodate that number.
I don't think so.
Okay, so what do we, I mean, could we offer the fact that you can email, or you could come in if you prefer to have a video done? I mean, is it okay to offer either option?
Or telephone call.
Or telephone?
The video.
We'll make what happen, whatever your preference is.
It might be the best way to go for us. Just doing video, emails, and phone calls.
And Russell, are you going to collect, you're going to put an announcement out on the website and collect and make the apparatus available to do that?
Correct. We'll set up times we can take calls and make that. Now, the transmission of video data might be, we'll have to figure that out.
And I guess that comes to mind, how do we know if somebody's at 123 Millrace Road, that they actually live there? And that's not somebody from, that lives in, Hyannisport. I mean, you know what I mean? So
I don't think you could, I don't know, can you deter people from
I
that?
know, that's just I guess just thinking out loud here, how do we, when we start logging these things, if that's what we're using this data for, I mean, how do we know that it's?
I think the minimal thing would be that you collect their name and their address. I mean, we require that for public comment now.
But the person shows up. But I don't know what, I don't have an answer for you.
You could require them to come and sign up the same form that we use now for public comment as part of the process. Or they could download it off of our, website and bring it in.
Yeah, when they're down on the computer, so leave another option out there.
Yeah. And we need to understand that this is it's not a perfect system, because there will be many people out here that will not feel comfortable commenting on this either way, because it is such a hot potato. They won't come in, and we've seen issues like that before. So it's a complicated problem to solve, and in the end, we're going to have to come up with some system that's not perfect. And so,
I guess does anybody have a problem with just putting something, either the mayor or the city manager putting something out saying that contacts I mean, that's what we're here for, is to hear from our people. And why not either by email, call, phone call, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's up to us to manage that as representing our district. So, I mean, why do we have to make it so hard, I guess? Why can't we put something out, reiterate the fact that we need to hear from our people, and then have them contact us, and then by a certain date, and then us as a council be prepared to vote by a certain date.
okay, but should we not also say, we'll make any of these available, but if they want to come in and do a video?
If they want to do it, but I'm just saying, I mean,
If they want to call me and give me their address, can they do that?
That's my point, that's what I'm saying, why can't we just field the calls from our constituents?
Yeah, I mean,
All right, I thought I heard you say to the mayor or the city manager.
No, I said have them send out a message on social media, the radio, whatever, to invite constituents to reach out to their their council person.
Okay, all right.
and they can certainly send emails like they have been doing in the
Yes.
city.
And to me, I still don't think we're making it too
All
hard.
right, so do we want to drop the video part?
They want to make a video, but I don't want
I'll keep video in there.
All right, so Russell, it seems like we want to put something out that says, please contact the council, particularly those that represent you as a constituent, but also if they want to make that available to everybody, you can do that either.
to. A lot of them have been, I mean,
Yeah.
we're all getting
Yeah.
emails, so I mean, I don't care if they copy whoever, but I think they want to reach out to me and let them do that. It's making this too hard.
Yeah, and if those people don't have technology, they can mail it in,
Mail, call.
mail a letter, call.
On what?
Okay?
Oh,
Y'all, let me just say that I've been talking to Jeff and Lakeitha, and a lot of people that I see is the concern about the whole issue is, where does it end? And there've been discussions as to what would talk about, where does it end? And I think that the things that were important were that the R.A. Lee name come down off the Thomaston Upson County Governmental Complex building and be placed in the archives or some appropriate place. I think there was also concern that the Lee curtains and the portraits of General Lee and Gordon be taken down and placed in the archives. And actually, the only thing about the curtains is Lee's name up there. So there might be a possibility of keeping the curtains if there's some way to either take off the Lee name or cover it up in some appropriate way. There was also the willingness for the Drake name to come off the building next door, and pictures of black leaders inside would be moved to the African American Museum. Now, where does it limit it? I think that there's no interest in seeing street names changed and all that. There's a time capsule out front that was, I think, put in by the class of 1970. Yeah, and it's to be dug up in 2025. And so I think it was fine to leave that monument there until it was dug up in 2025, and then it would be moved to a more appropriate place, much like the archive. There are two benches out front, really, that are fine being there. One was a bench put out there in the name of Melvin Irvin, and then the other one was given by one class, I think, of 1970 maybe. And so I don't think there's an issue about that. And then there's the question of, it just seems like there's so much interest in the Robert E. Lee legacy that's here. And I know that there's a sign out front and a historical marker that talks much about that legacy. And, there might, in my feeling, that if these things were done, it would be better to have a more permanent marker in that yard that might tell the story of R.A. Lee Institute. But also, in fairness, the Drake Building might have a marker also that would discuss the history and legacy of the Drake School and that type of thing. So again, I know that there's a lot of concern over these issues as to, well, where does it all end? Because you think about, well, you've got Jeff Davis Road in the county, you've got Lee Street, you've got Jackson Avenue. But I think the things that we found were most important was that Lee name over the that is up there on the Thomaston-Upson County Government Complex. And that is concerned, as well as the portraits and the curtains, So, and then the thought that, well, in fairness, you've got the Drake building next door, so in the fairness to everybody, those things ought to be taken down. But that would pretty much accomplish, I think, what the black community would like to see. Is that not
That is
correct?
correct.
Lakeitha, is that?
That's it. That's it. And that'd be a marker as it relates to, as far as the Drake building, as it relates to the Drake School. I did speak to the individual at the African American Museum, and they feel that can be done as far as moving the pictures or whatever to the African American Museum.
Thank you, Lakeitha. Y'all, the thing about this is I really think that this is it's obviously an issue that has the passion of people on both sides. And I think that we can lead the way and be an example to other communities in Georgia if we come to an agreement and do this right. And I think we have the opportunity to lead the way on it. So, you know, I thought it was important to sort of try to search out what is important to the black community that needs to be done, and also to both sides, what are the limits? And so, as people think about in their responses, then I think it needs to think in those terms that I think there could be an agreement. Are there any other thoughts or questions?
Would you like to set timeframes as far as potential dates and cutoffs for correspondence?
Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
You know, we had talked about a potential meeting on either the 24th or the 27th, which would be, you know, Monday or next Thursday, it being Tuesday now. So how much notice and opportunity would you like to give the general public prior to that meeting?
I would like not the 24th, if any way possible. That's my day to go be tested.
Okay.
So I can come out from under this. If we could do it a day other than the 24th, I would appreciate it for that reason.
When does the mayor think he'll be back?
Mayor, do you have any indication on when you'll be back safe?
Tomorrow, hopefully.
Tomorrow. I guess I got the latest date, mine the 24th.
Again, everybody's quiet. Anybody got any comments?
We're asking that constituents contact us that way. We have to give them enough time to be able to do it. Get it out there so that they'll know the date. When they would contact, give them enough time to contact their council members.
Just to make sure, there are people that are going to have to mail, that are going to choose to mail, there are people going to choose to email, there may be those that want to take the time to come in and do a video. So when is our first meeting in September?
September 1st.
So would that give, do we feel like that would give enough time?
I would cut it off several days prior to the meeting day. That
Okay.
way you have the opportunity to review anything
Okay.
that comes.
All right, so
A week and
You can cut it off to the 27th, but then
a week from now.
a week from whenever, I would assume the message will get out tomorrow.
All right, so if the message got out tomorrow, it's Wednesday, could we say by the end of the next week? Or do you want to just say a week from Wednesday? We'll get it out tomorrow and then we want them in by, what would next Wednesday be?
26th.
The 26th, what about that? And then we'll deal with it on the 1st. I know everybody feels like this is an issue that they'd rather be done with sooner rather than later.
All right, so my orders are to put out a publication website. We'll get with Dave, we'll put it in the paper that council wishes for their constituents or citizens to contact their elected representative either by call, email, an opportunity to video, or even potentially mail. And the deadline for the transmission of that correspondence be set for September the 26th. And
August 26th.
August the 26th. I'm on the wrong month. And that the vote be set for the first regularly scheduled meeting in September.
Okay.
Oh,
Is that, yeah.
I have a question. If you have the meeting on September 1st, even though you're not going to be taking public comment and having speak, I guess this is a question for you. You're still going to have a large crowd show up because they're going to want to see how you guys vote. So my question is, if you have that meeting here and we fill capacity, do you have to stop the meeting or you just not let people in?
We can limit, we're not bound to my knowledge, you're not bound to make unlimited access to the.
No, I know, I'm just
I
asking
mean,
the question of what,
You can move it to the civic center probably and get more people in, but once you get your numbers in, then you just stop letting them come in, right?
I mean, I guess you set the parameter for public comment, but as far as attendance, I know
We're back right at where we started.
do you do a virtual meeting?
Well, I thought about the same thing, that, people are going to come, so you're going to have people.
You're gonna have been, so I mean, does it defeat back where we started?
Yeah, so would we have?
So could you have a physical quorum, but have a virtual broadcast and still meet the intent of the public meeting?
Let me look back at that statute. I've looked at it, but I probably need to look back at it with that specific question in mind.
These are unusual times.
They are.
and I just state that because I know you'll still have a large contingency show up just to see how the vote.
And then I think for the safety of all people involved, you're gonna have a large, need to have a lot, a good safety contingent from the police or.
No, that's why I'm asking, because
Yeah.
I'm
So-
gonna have to plan for that.
Yeah, and so, let me ask you, do you think you could adequately, knowing that there would be large numbers, do you think that you can have an adequate force to present that?
Yeah, I don't think that we're gonna have some crazy irate crowds and people going nuts. But I just think, and I think that was demonstrated in the march and all that.
Right.
I think it can be done civilly. I'm just worried about sheer numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers of showing up and controlling the numbers and keeping people spread out.
Okay.
I'm not so worried about, people acting crazy or doing something.
Yeah.
So yes, I would think that I could have an adequate number of personnel
Okay.
between myself and the sheriff's department, because the sheriff and I have already talked about it.
Okay, so Deanne, you think you can sort of think about our ability to limit numbers, and again, where would that meeting be? Is it gonna be here? Is it gonna be in the auditorium? Is it gonna be?
My recommendation, if it would be allowable, if we anticipate an issue with crowding, would be to advertise it as a virtual meeting. And then you all will have the option to participate physically in quorum here and then live broadcast to YouTube like we do. That would be my preference, if that meets legal.
I think
And
that's,
I think it
Should
would,
meet it for a regular meeting, I would think you would.
yeah, I think that's a good plan.
I think that would fall into the statute.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
Yes,
To
I
have,
agree.
to meet here, have a virtual meeting, but those who want to come and be present can.
Is that the one?
Well,
that's
council,
Correct.
Council would be present,
yeah. And it,
and it would be broadcast.
yeah, so it would not be
Just like
a
today.
public meeting.
It'd be a public
It would be.
meeting, it would be a virtual meeting.
Virtual, so we wouldn't entertain people actually coming physically, because
Correct.
you're limited as to the number.
Would that be the September the 1st meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so to be clear to everybody, it'd be a virtual meeting. The only people present would be those councilmen who wish to come.
Correct.
All right. Any other thoughts on that? Okay.
One brief executive session matter regarding acquisition.
All right, so we have this executive session. Do we have anyone that makes, do we close the meeting and then open an executive?
Oh,
I mean, we have
All right,
I
yeah.
skipped
All
one.
right, yeah, that's correct. So there's other business. Is there anybody who has comments under other business? Okay, if not, then, do we want to shut down this meeting? Or do we have a, how do you do that?
Let's go into executive session.
Just one brief comment for the public. I want to apologize for any inconvenience for last week's shutdown. We did have some positive cases here at City Hall, so thank you for bearing with us. But city offices here are back open to the public.
So the process now is to shut down the meeting and open an executive session.
No, just make a motion to go into executive
To
session.
make a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
For the purpose of discussing real estate. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Bill, roll call.
Councilman Brenham?
All right.
Councilman Wood?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hicks?
Yeah.
Councilman Tucker?
Yes.
Councilman Williams?
Okay, so we are back in the regular session. And the question that I have, we want to give people every available method to call in. So email and regular mail, and if they want to come in and do a video, we'll provide that. And was there a
phone call?
And telephone call. So Lakeitha, let me ask you, Lakeitha, you don't have the technology, right? The technology component, and I'm thinking that how many people will not have that technology component and will want to write a letter? Is a week's time adequate? Do we feel like that we are providing the best possible method for everybody to use the choice they take? And I'm just worried that we may not be giving enough time. And it doesn't mean that we even have to wait till the next meeting. We could have a call. We could have a called virtual meeting if we had to. But I'm just wondering, you know, it's easy for us to think, oh, I'd write a letter tomorrow. But you're talking about people that, well, number one, we got to get the method out. We got to get the message out. And are people going to have time to do it? So I'm concerned that that might be too quick a cutoff. I'm not saying that we have to wait till the next scheduled meeting, but the first, and what do we say, the 26th?
27th.
I mean, is that an adequate time? And I don't want somebody saying, you didn't give me adequate time.
What, I don't understand, I mean, to sit down and say, I want to, this is my feelings, I want to take it down.
Yeah.
I mean, does it really take a week to do that?
It wouldn't for me, no.
I mean, to write a letter, I mean, it's.
Yeah, I mean, y'all.
A week is enough.
Okay, so,
So you say a week is enough? I don't.
A week? What's enough?
And like you say, if we don't have to wait till the third meeting, we need to have a call meeting to do it.
well, so Lakeitha, is to the end of next week adequate? I'm just thinking, I want to be fair to everybody.
The end of next week, are you saying we're that Friday? That Friday or that next week?
Yes?
I tell you what I would like to do. I would like to have 2 Sundays.
Okay. So,
I would like to have 2 Sundays.
so this Sunday, the next Sunday, so would you put it on Monday following the 2 Sundays from now?
Sunday, Labor Day.
It doesn't matter. I just like to have 2 Sundays. Because we ain't allowed to reach a lot of my folks that do the church.
What day's Labor Day?
The 6th is Labor Day, I think.
No, it's
The 7th is Labor Day.
7th is Labor Day.
That would put it on the 31st if you want 2 Sundays, which would be the 23rd and the 30th. 23rd this Sunday, then the 30th the next Sunday. You can come back and.
I'd have this Sunday and another Sunday.
Mhm.
Any time after that, fine with me.
31st is that Monday, and then the first follow up on the Tuesday. That would be our regular meeting right there. On September 1st would be our regular meeting. And probably, that's Labor Day weekend coming up also.
All right, so the 30th is the second, so, and Monday, the
31st.
is that Labor Day?
No, that's August 31st, that Monday.
So should we say has to be in by Monday the 31st?
Fine with me.
Well, and then, does it give us enough time to listen to it or see them? Is the first is the very next day?
Yeah, you have a meeting, that'll be our meeting day on September the 1st. That'll give them, I guess, the rest of the week, because you're not gonna do anything about being Labor Day weekend, I'm sure. So, you'll probably come back that Tuesday, the 8th.
Tuesday the 8th and have a virtual meeting?
Right.
A called meeting on the 8th?
We won't be meeting here, but you will have to meet, because the commission meets that day also, county meets. on that Tuesday.
So would we do it like we did last time, a virtual meeting at 3 o'clock?
Good.
Russell, what's your thoughts on
Whatever y'all said, I'm here for.
that? So, Lakeitha, does that give you what
It's
you?
fine that the virtual meeting on the 8th of September?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're talking about, but it would have to be earlier that day because the
Can.
county's gonna meet on that day. It'd have to be one of those 3 o'clock meetings. But I think at that point, we should be ready to vote. We're not necessarily worried about the time of day that it is.
No, I'm fine with 8th.
Okay. All right. So, are we okay with that, Don?
Cutoff deadline Monday, the 31st, and called meeting on Tuesday, the 8th, at 3 o'clock.
Okay. Now, we've already voted. We didn't vote. Did we vote on that or no? Okay. All right, so Dave is probably already writing up his report, so you'll just need to contact him.
We'll get him.
All right.
You've been out just to get it in the newspaper, make it right.
All right. So they gotta be in by the, what was that?
Monday, the 31st.
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 Anybody the 31st?
And we're gonna vote on it on the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Meeting, we'll do a virtual meeting on the 8th at 3 o'clock.
8th at 3 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and we'll put that on our website too. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So if there are no other issues, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Mine do.
Okay. All right. Thank
Get
you.
a bit on this, Reed.
All right, then. Have a good night.
You too.